ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Hinssen.
Thanks, Monique. Thank you. Let me just put that up. Wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and it is indeed a pleasure to see a whole conference talking about the book that I wrote a couple of years ago. And I want to start with this observation. This is one of my favorite books, A Tale of Two Cities. And if you're well-read, you know that The Tale of Two Cities starts with that amazing phrase, it is the best of times and it is the worst of times. And I think that's exactly the world of the new normal that we've gotten into. Technology has never been more amazing, but at the same time, we feel the challenges for our organizations. I'm going to start with this painting, painted by Vermeer a long time ago, 300 years ago. I love this painting, and if Vermeer would have lived today, that's what he would have painted. That's the world that we've gotten into. Technology has gotten completely normal, and we see this in our everyday lives. As a couple of examples of sign of the times, I don't have to explain what this is to this crowd, but being retweeted 3.3 million times is absolutely amazing. But this is my favorite. I love this image. This is a young girl, Ella, who is doing a biblical reenactment in Galilee. And she can follow the story of the Bible on her iPad because her donkey is Wi-Fi enabled. And I thought, wow, it's the most beautiful example of the fact that technology has become completely normal. And even in that whole transition, I think we're only halfway there. We're on an S-curve in that world of digital. We're halfway there. And of course, most of you were born before that age. Most of you come from the world of analog. And in those days, technology was a very simple thing. This is the old normal. I adore this clip. I'm a technologist. In the old normal, we could give users technology, and they had no idea how to use technology at all. And in many cases, they had a completely wrong way of using technology with disastrous consequences as a result. And we feel sorry for the guy, but he doesn't work in your companies anymore. I mean, he's been Darwinian selected and rooted out a long time ago. This is my favorite clip. Many of you have seen this, but I adore this. This is the woman who's been out of the office for 20 years, very long maternity leave, comes back after 20 years and has no idea how technology has changed in 20 years' time. And you get the joke, but if I show this to my kids who are 10 and 15, they have no idea why this is funny. You are the last generation of an audience who finds this amusing. And that way you are the last of the Mohicans of an analog generation. And technology now is very hot. You cannot open up a business magazine or we talk about the impact of technology. You can see that by their headquarters. This is my favorite building in New York. This is the Chrysler building from the day and age where cars were the hottest piece of technology. This is the new headquarters of Apple in Cupertino. These are the new cribs of power. This is the new headquarters of Amazon in Seattle. That's where the new power bases are today. And technology is absolutely smoking hot from a financial point of view. A company dealing with 140 characters, getting a $25 billion valuation is absolutely absurd. Even more absurd is, of course, a couple of months ago when we saw this happening, and it's all about reach, it's about speed, it's about velocity, and it's about getting there faster. But technology has really become relevant. And I adore this cover of Businessweek talking about the failure of Obamacare. And Obamacare was a failure not because of the program, but because the technology behind it didn't work. Technology has become extremely relevant in our society. But above all, above anything else, it has become a normality. And we're only halfway there. If you look at children, it's pretty clear. And The Atlantic talks about the touchscreen generation. If I hear one more story of a parent about their 2-year-old child who can swipe, I'm probably going to throw up, but it is a reality. But still, I am endeared by this beautiful, beautiful Santa Claus letter that a young girl wrote with the Amazon URL detailing exactly what she wanted to have for Christmas. That is the new normal. Huh? And that's the reality that we have today. And I have no idea how old you are. I was drawn into the world of technology 30 years ago when my father came home with this and connected that to the TV 30 years ago and produced that. That was a wow moment in my life. This is, and some of you might remember that. Who remembers that? Just, okay, so this is the Berlin Geriatric Society meeting here today. Huh? It's a bunch of old people talking about the new normal. But it's a reality that we are in a transition phase. And we forget old technology really, really quickly. This is a website where you have to be 18 years old to enter. And instead of asking, how old are you, they said, what is the image below? Well, there isn't a 12-year-old who can pass this test. That's how quickly technology is changing. And the impact is massive. I adore this New Yorker cover, a typical family reunion 20, 25 years ago compared to a typical family reunion today. The impact on society is absolutely vast. And sometimes we forget that we still do more things than just sit behind those screens every day. But certainly when you look at the next gen, people born after 1986, my favorite definition of work for them is it's the brief period during the day where I still have to use old technology. And many Generation Y feel like they are time travelers. They live in the 21st century, and they go to work and work with 20th century tools and 20th century structures, and they can't wait until it's 5 o'clock and go back to the 21st century. And I think we're just halfway there. And it's all about S-curves. I've compared it to a swimming pool because I think we're halfway there in that new normal phase. We're just about to be thrown into the deep end of the pool, and I think the whole digital thing is a swimming pool. We've been waddling in the shallow end of the digital pool for a long time. We're now halfway in that pool, and we're about to be thrown into the deep end of the digital pool, where technology really is normal. And the question is, can you survive? And let me give you an analogy, and you know, it's a German joke, but I thought it was appropriate being in Berlin. But it's a beautiful advertisement from BMW from 1971 that I think is the most beautiful ad that ever came out of BMW. And it's this one. BMW, Bavarian Motor Works, was trying to win the hearts and minds of American motor lovers by focusing on the exclusive Dreikugelwirbelwellenbrennraum inside the engine of their beautiful BMWs. Now, the minds of German marketeers must be very special to think that focusing on the Dreikugelwirbelwellenbrennraum would really sell more cars. But in those days, it was all about technology. And then the market flipped. Then technology became the new normal in the car industry. This is a recent ad from BMW. There is no more Dreikugelwirbelwellenbrennraum in this picture. And even when they talk about technology, they talk about the use of technology and the impact of technology, but not technology per se. And that's exactly what will happen in our world of technology. We're halfway there, but now we see that the network is becoming the most powerful metaphor. It's the network which is taking over. And I have no idea when you joined the race, but today this has redefined basically how we do business. This is my favorite word of the moment, nomophobia, the fear of being out of cell phone range. They treat people for that. We are extremely connected, and we feel the need to share information on that network. This is a beautiful New Yorker cover. This is parents Instagramming about their children who are going trick-or-treating. That's the world that we've gotten into. Not only are we constantly connected, we're constantly sharing, and we feed the network. You're at a magnificent conference. This is a great venue. This is a great place. You're all very happy people. But who are the happiest people in this room? They combine two unique characteristics, and that's a full battery in 5 bars. Those are the happiest people in this room. And I'm exaggerating only slightly. We've become extremely addicted to the network, and the network is really starting to come alive. I was born in '69. This is an iconic view of our planet. This is the very first image of the Earth taken by a camera on the moon. That's a feat of human engineering that we could have done that. But this is just one night and one day on Facebook showing the interconnection patterns and the flow, and an image of our planet starts to materialize. We're now living through the age of livid networks. It's the best of times, but it is also the worst of times. Things happen faster and faster. I don't have time to get in too much detail, but I've become fascinated by the concept of VUCA. And that's what the new normal is about as well. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The world will never be stable again, but in the new normal, you will see more and more volatility. You can't bank on certainties. You have to be an expert at managing uncertainties. Simple things, look at social, can have huge complex effects, and the end result is there is no more black and white. But if companies want to survive in this fast-changing world of VUCA, they have to adopt a very fluid strategy. I work with companies every day, and they used to have 5-year plans. They don't have 5-year plans. And if they do have a 5-year plan, they change it twice a year. That's the fluidity, how companies are dealing with strategy. And if they want to survive in that new normal, there are 2 things essential. 1 is speed, and 2 is agility. If you don't move fast enough, you're probably not going to survive. This is, in my opinion, the dumbest movie ever made. This is an absurdly horrible plot. But there's a very interesting analogy there. They had to drive the bus at 50 miles an hour that it didn't explode. But think about the analogy. At what speed do you have to keep innovating in your company that you actually don't explode in the world of the new normal? In many markets, what you see is there's an external clock. And in many markets, that external clock is going faster and faster and faster. But the internal clock, the rate of change inside your organization, isn't necessarily keeping pace. And if the clock on the left is ticking slower than the clock on the right, you're in deep trouble in the new normal. This is interesting because the benchmark really now is the speed of the network. These are the illustrations of Foursquare as you'd see it played out in New York City from morning till evening. Networks aren't special anymore. Networks have become real, and information starts to flow on these networks. Information makes networks alive, and we're now beginning to feel the speed of the network being played out. And let's be clear, information is crucial. Information is now flowing. Information is rich and visual, and information is the fuel of that network economy. Information is something that is going through a dramatic transformation because we used to think of information as a lake, as a pond, and we built capacity in reservoirs. But now, in the age of networks, information flows on the network, and we have to figure out how to make sense of a river instead of a pond. And this is the first thing I want you to think about. If that happens, I believe the old concept of a market is gone. Markets are turning into networks in front of our very eyes because information starts to flow. Maybe you've been there, maybe you haven't, but it's worth a visit. This is the YouTube studios in Santa Monica, and I love going there. They built a magnificent studio. They bought the old Howard Hughes helicopter factory and turned it into the most advanced studio in the Hollywood area. They have the best cameras, best lighting, and you can record a YouTube video with the best equipment in the world, go straight to YouTube for free, as long as you have 500,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. You can say, well, okay, who has 500,000 subscribers? But we're now seeing those networks being played out by totally different influencers. I met this woman. I absolutely adore her. This is Michelle Pham. Michelle is a 25-year-old Vietnamese-American girl who made a viral video a couple of years ago called How to Apply Mascara. And it was aimed at young females who use cosmetics for the first time. It went viral. And she created her own channel, which now has 5.9 million subscribers. And she uploads a video every Friday night on how to use cosmetics. And if you ask the L'Oreals of this world, in the US, 14 to 19, who is the biggest influencer, it's Michelle Phan. Because those girls don't watch TV anymore, they're on YouTube. They don't read magazines, they're on YouTube. And Michelle is not just a very creative person, she's also one of the richest 25-year-old girls I have ever met in my entire life. Connect ID of Google, half of the advertising revenue goes to Google YouTube, half goes to Michelle Phan. She is one of the richest 25-year-olds I have ever met. If you go back to your family tonight or tomorrow, and if you have teenage children, and you open up the door of their bedroom, and they're not doing their homework, they're making a video of themselves to be put on YouTube, do not interfere. This could be the best chance of a retirement you ever will have. But what it means is when markets turn into networks, averages are out. These guys are basically out of business because markets have turned into fluid networks of information. This is marketing for 50 years. You have a brand, you need to connect to a customer, you use an ad agency who pockets 15%, who then carpet bombs the hell out of your customers. That's marketing for 50 years. And bam, all of a sudden, there is a network in between. That is the new normal. The new normal is not about adding yet another channel to the mix, it's about fundamentally rethinking everything when the network starts to connect everything. Monique said, I'm an engineer. This is the first week of engineering school. And you have to study this. It's the linear pendulum. It's very simple. Yeah? It's very predictable. It's very linear, simple laws of gravity. And then you unhinge just one hinge, and you have two elements which are connected together. And all of a sudden, the resulting motion becomes completely unpredictable and completely irrational. This is what happens when you just have two elements who are connected together and who are being played out. Imagine what you will have when all of a sudden markets turn into networks and you have a total fluidity in terms of strategy. That means we have to completely abandon the old mechanisms of linear thinking. This is scary because when markets turn into networks, my fundamental belief is companies will have to become networks as well. I have no idea in what companies you work, but I meet a lot of companies who are very, very hierarchical because that's the model that we've known and have known for a very long time. We structure organizations, and this is probably the worst instrument of torture we have ever invented. This is the relic of the industrial society, but it is not fit for the age of networks. We're now seeing a generation entering our companies who believe differently. The next generation isn't different because they understand digital. That's hogwash. But it's different because they have learned to think in a network. They believe in equality, they believe in meritocracy, and they believe in sharing information. A 22-year-old who joins a company today knows that the more they share in the network, the more valuable they become. And they're entering companies where information is still hoarded and basically not shared. That means that we have to reinvent our old structures. I was deeply influenced last year by this man, General McChrystal. He was the commanding officer of the US Armed Forces in Afghanistan. And he went to Afghanistan fighting a war with his military command and control structure, and he was completely unsuccessful. And then he realized the US Army had been fighting similar structures for the last 300 years. But now he was fighting an enemy that was actually a network. And what he had to do is change his organization into a network organization in order to be successful to fight the enemy. He said, and I love this, it takes a network to fight a network. Now, think about this. If I'm right, and the outside world becomes a network, then companies will have to become networks if they want to be clever and survive. It takes a network to serve a network, and that is going to be a fundamental recreation of our old structures, if we want to survive. Today we're at a situation where the networks are getting feedback faster and faster. This was my favorite record store in the US, Tower Records. They had everything, they knew everything. It was founded in 1960, and they had their best year ever in 1999. And in 1999, a strange phenomenon was taking place. Customers went to the store, bought a CD, went home, and returned it the very next day. And Tower Records had a free return policy. You didn't like it? No, I want another one. Took another one home, returned it the very next day. Now, the people at the cashier knew what was going on because they were ripping MP3s just like the customers. But how did the executives interpret that? Did they understand the signals? Did they see that it was a completely new consumption pattern of music? No. They could have invented iTunes, they didn't do that. They could have invented YouTube, they didn't do that. You know what they did? They changed the return policy. They were out of business 4 years later. And this is what is happening in an increasing pace. I spend almost half of my time in Silicon Valley. I live in Belgium, but I spend almost half of the time in Silicon Valley. And I loved going there. Silicon Valley is the birthplace of all these wonderful tech giants. Hewlett-Packard and Apple and Google. And they all start in a garage. This is HP's garage, this is Apple's garage, this is... in Silicon Valley, if you don't have a garage, you're worthless. That is your main asset in Silicon Valley. But what is now interesting is Silicon Valley used to be the high-tech capital of the world. It still is. But it is now rapidly becoming the industry disruption capital of the world. This is not a technology company. This is basically a bunch of technologists disrupting the world of automotive. This is not a technology company. This is a bunch of technologists changing the world of advertisement. The heart of advertisement used to be Madison Avenue in New York. Now it's University Avenue in Palo Alto. These guys are disrupting mobility. These guys are disrupting the television industry. These guys are disrupting finance. And this is my favorite. Airbnb has 180,000 beds that they supply every night. That's 180,000 beds that are being sucked out of the traditional hotel system. They are disrupting the world of hospitality. You know how big their IT department is? 3 people. They manage the Amazon Web Services contract. That's disruptive innovation. And I think this is going to be the scariest moment ever. The new normal is a fantastic place, but it is going to be the cemetery where many traditional companies won't survive. This is your new competitor. If you're a bank, your competitor is not another bank. Your competitor is a 27-year-old kid with a hoodie in Silicon Valley. You should all be wearing hoodies if you want to survive the new normal. That is going to be our wake-up call. So let me wrap it up. Are you built to last? I loved this book when it came out 20 years ago by Jim Collins, and he described 18 companies built to last compared with 18 companies doomed to fail. The 18 companies doomed to fail, he got them all right. The 18 companies built to last, today only 4 survive. This is a magical company. I adored the story, I adored their products. Edwin Land was the Steve Jobs of the 1960s. He kicked Kodak's ass and he invented instant photography. And if you're old enough to remember that, if you took a picture with a Polaroid, out comes the Polaroid image, which we flapped, completely pointless, but we all flapped it. And then the image crystallizes. It was about as close to magic as it gets. And they went out of business. 23,000 people lost their job. Because they were stupid? No, they had the best talent in the world. Because they didn't see digital coming? No. The problem was every digital opportunity they presented to the board had lower margins than the ones they were used to. And people are so completely addicted to the margins of the old normal that they may not survive that new normal. This is now, incidentally, the hippest thing to have in Silicon Valley. You take a picture with your iPhone, put it on top of that machine, load it with old Polaroid film, and out comes the Polaroid image of what you just took on your iPhone. That's the most retro chic thing to have walking the streets of Palo Alto. My message is, don't wait until you are retro chic. The new normal is a magnificent place. But this is the right question. Can you adapt and leverage? Can you take some of the things that we're going to be talking about during these 2 days that seem dangerous and threatening, but see that there's an opportunity if you see that in a different light? maybe some of the things that seem downright scary and life-threatening for your traditional business might have an upside potential if you actually see that in a different light. There is a tsunami of change in that new normal. My message is you have to learn how to experiment faster than ever before. Don't overdo strategy. This is the greatest strategic thinker of the 20th century. This is Professor Dr. Iron Mike Tyson, who once had the most beautiful statement about strategy when he said, everybody has a strategy until they punch you in the mouth. I think that is what the new normal is all about. And this is a session about leadership. I teach at LBS. My favorite professor on leadership is Rob Goffey. And he said, leaders have charisma. You have to radiate this out to the rest of the organization, and you have to take risk. I don't know if you're a risk taker. I don't know if you have charisma, but that's what you will need in that new normal. You have to take risks, and you have to radiate that out. I sometimes have people who come to me afterwards and say, Peter, I have charisma, but the other people don't see it. Well, that's a problem to start with. Fundamentally, let me close. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. We're now entering a world where it's not about technology anymore. It's not about devices. It's not about gimmicks. It's not about mobile phones or smartphones or tablets. It's about how it changes our behavior, how it changes our consumption patterns. The new normal is about not the Draaikugelwirbel wennen Brennraums, but about fundamentally what it does to our lives, our society, how we actually deal with that and are constantly connected to the network. But we have to fundamentally understand the patterns behind that. We have to understand the math and the algorithms. We have to understand the flow of information once these networks really become alive. And you will see that in many cases, what we have from nature is exactly the same as what you have there. For the first time, informations are magically transforming and becoming really alive. That is a golden opportunity for the age of networks. We're all in the information business. The network always wins. I can only wish you a lot of success. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.